If you're chasing the biggest, wildest monitor you can buy at this moment, this might be your new obsession, or your biggest waste of money yet. Behind me is the LG 45GX950A, also known as the LG GX9. It's a 45-inch OLED Ultrawide with a 5K 2K resolution and a price tag that feels like a new GPU. It uses an OLED panel with a 165Hz refresh rate, which can even be pushed to 330Hz using its dual mode feature, but we'll get to that later. Add to that an aggressive 800R curvature and you're looking at one of the most immersive monitor designs on the market today. Of course, a monitor like this doesn't come cheap. The MSRP sits at a whopping $2,000, but I was lucky enough to snag it for $1,880. That is, of course, if you want to call paying nearly $2,000 for a monitor lucky. Welcome back to STRK Tech. Today we're reviewing the LG GX9. We'll start with a quick unboxing and then go over the design of the GX9, the ports, its unique dual mode feature, OLED panel, and finally how it performs in both gaming and productivity. I've also added timestamps in the description down below so you can easily jump to one section or another. Also, just to be clear, this is not a sponsored video. I bought this monitor with my own money, so everything you hear is 100% my own opinion. Now let's kick things off with the unboxing. Needless to say, it's a pretty big box, and since my staircase is rather narrow, getting it up was a bit of a challenge. In the box there is a smaller accessories box in which you'll find the power brick, which is surprisingly heavy, the power cord, one HDMI 2.1 cable, one USB Type-C cable, a small cable clip, a DisplayPort 2.1 cable, and finally a lot of paperwork that I'm definitely not going to read. Moving to the bigger box, you'll find a heavy metal bottom plate, the second part of the monitor stand, which is made of the same plastic material as the back of the monitor, a small plastic cover to hide the cables, and finally, of course, the monitor itself. Now let's continue with the design. And to address the elephant in the room, yes, this thing is humongous.
That's what she said!
Now, 45 inches is by far the biggest monitor that I've ever owned, and I was genuinely worried that this thing would be unusable on my desk. However, the 800R curvature really makes the whole experience unique. Yes, it's a big screen and it takes up quite some space on your desk, but because of that aggressive curve, it makes it an incredibly immersive experience. The monitor obviously comes with a stand, which is pretty heavy and durable, but I prefer to have it mounted to my monitor arm anyway, so I don't use a stand. Overall, I'm a big fan of the design. It has very thin bezels and no logo, so it looks super clean. There is also an LED light on the back of the monitor, but it's very dim and barely noticeable, even in a completely dark room, so if they would have left that out, I wouldn't have minded at all, I think. Around the back, port selection is pretty solid. You get one DisplayPort 2.1 port, two HDMI 2.1 ports, one USB-C with DP alt mode and up to 90 watts of power delivery, and two USB-A ports that could function as a hub when connected over USB-C. I do appreciate the two USB-A ports, but as someone who uses this monitor for both work and gaming, I really would have liked to see a built-in KVM switch, especially at this insane price point. Lastly, there's a 3.5mm audio jack, so you can pass around out to headphones or a decent speaker setup without relying entirely on the built-in speakers. Which don't sound too bad, by the way. Once everything is plugged in, all settings are controlled using a small joystick-like button on the back. From here you can adjust brightness, contrast and switch between different resolutions that come with the dual mode feature. There isn't a huge amount of customization, but for me personally it's more than enough. There's also a free app called LG Switch that you can download, which lets you customize pretty much everything directly from your PC instead of digging through the on-screen display menu. Now, this is where things get interesting. The LG GX9 has a dual mode feature, which means it can switch resolution and refresh rate at the press of a button. In its main mode, you're running the full 5120 by 2160 resolution at up to 165Hz, which is fantastic for productivity and immersive single-player games. With one button press, the monitor drops down to a resolution of 2560 by 1080 and cranks the refresh rate all the way up to 330Hz. In total, there are 8 different modes to choose from, which you can see on the table right here. Okay, now personally, I don't really care for this feature. I like playing some esports titles every now and then, but I'm not really that much into competitive games. On top of that, I prefer visual fidelity over extremely high refresh rates, but if you're someone who prioritizes FPS over resolution, I think this feature is absolutely worth having. The switch only takes a few seconds and the difference is immediately noticeable. That said, there is one big downside worth mentioning here. When running non-native resolutions, especially 2560 by 1080, the monitor scaling isn't perfect. Pixels are stretched unevenly, resulting in a slightly blurrier image compared to true integer scaling. An optional integer scaling mode would be ideal here. Now let's talk about the OLED panel, because this is where the GX9 really starts to justify its price tag. The monitor runs at 5120 by 2160, which equals about 11.1 million pixels. Spread across a 45-inch panel, that results in a pixel density of roughly 125 pixels per inch. For comparison, a 27-inch 1440p monitor sits around 108 ppi, while a 32-inch 4K display comes in at about 138 ppi. The result for this monitor with its 108 ppi is a very sharp image with clear text that's extremely easy to read. This is my first OLED monitor, and the visual difference was immediately obvious. Colors look extremely rich and blacks are truly black. Because each pixel emits its own light and can turn off completely, contrast is effectively infinite. Dark scenes stay dark, bright highlights pop, and there's no backlight glow whatsoever. Motion clarity is excellent as well, thanks to ultra-fast pixel response time of around 0.03 milliseconds. Compared to high-end 1 millisecond LCD monitors, the difference is subtle, but technically OLED still has the edge. Color coverage is also impressive with around 98.5% of DCI-P3 and support for VESA display HDR True Black 400. The brightness is something I had to adjust to though. The panel sits around 275 nits for full screen brightness, with HDR highlights reaching well over 1300 nits in small areas. However, coming from a 450 nit nano IPS panel, it felt dim at first, but after a few hours my eyes adjusted and I definitely now prefer the look of the OLED. Okay, so I've been using this monitor for the past couple of weeks and honestly it's by far the best gaming experience I've ever had. The combination of 45 inches of OLED, an 800R curvature and ultra-wide 5K 2K resolution makes it feel like the game is literally wrapping around you. There's a real sense of immersion that pulls you into every scene. However, to really use this monitor the way it's meant to be used, you need some serious GPU horsepower. At the full 5120 by 2160 resolution, you're pushing over 11 million pixels per frame. That's about 30% more than 4K. I've been running it with an RTX 5080 and even that GPU is struggling at times. After lowering some settings to high or even medium, you're looking at frame rates in the 90 to 120 FPS in most games, assuming DLSS is enabled. Now, native rendering is possible, but it's not efficient. DLSS or similar is basically mandatory here, especially for new titles. For productivity, this monitor is equally impressive. All the screen real estate makes multitasking super easy, and I can comfortably have 3 windows side by side without feeling cramped. Video editing, spreadsheets or design work all benefit from the XR-Width too, and while timelines or rulers can appear slightly curved due to the 800R shape, it's hardly noticeable in daily use. Having used Ultrawides for years, I genuinely couldn't see myself going back to a standard 60x9 display, especially after using this beast. So, is the LG GX9 worth it? Objectively, this is one of the most impressive monitors ever made. The OLED panel is stunning, the immersion is unmatched, and once you get used to the 5K 2K ultra-wide, everything else that you use feels grand. The LG GX9 is a milestone in display tech, but it's also a tool that demands the right user, the right GPU and the right expectations. Now if you tick all those boxes, it's unmatched, but if you don't, it's probably overkill. This is not a monitor that I'd recommend to most people, but if you want the most immersive PC gaming experience you can buy right now, and you're willing to build your setup around it, there's honestly nothing else like it. For better or worse, this is the new benchmark for me. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please consider subscribing and leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one.